Hey everyone, I have a question for you. What if you had an invitation in the mail and you got it and you were about to open it up and you were like, do I want to go? If you've ever had a moment like this, and especially if you're a coach or a counselor or a professional of any kind, you may have had several invitations to join groups and you're like, is this really for me? Like, what do I do if I get there and it's not? Is there a 30-day return policy on this? If you've ever thought of this, well, you, my friend, are in the right place. Welcome to the Radical Care for Christian Counselors, and you're just starting a brand new series which is called You Are Invited. And it's really a sneak peek into what I call my tip community groups. And if you're first timer on here, don't feel lost. TIP stands for Thrive Intentional Practice Groups. It's where we really stop and we practice these activities such as checking in, as relational connections, as interactive appreciation, being present for one another, asking curious questions. And then in return, the people that are in these groups, they work together and they learn to launch their own groups with these really deep practices of connecting and knowing each other well. If that's something you would like to do, well, stick around and you'll actually get to see some of my tip community group in action. Now, granted, this is not a normal flow for our group. I just gathered a bunch of people and said, hey, you're a current tip community group member. Can you just answer some questions with me? And these are some of the ones that came. And over the next couple weeks, you guys will get to know them a little better. You'll get to know some of the questions that I asked them. And so today we're focusing on what the heck is a tip community group? And you get to see behind the curtain of some of those that are involved. They're really authentic and real with you. And we're going to tackle the question, what do you do when fear creeps in? And how do you know if this is the right group for you? Let's take a look. Hello, friends. If you're watching this video, this is just a fun, candid conversation that I'm having with some of my ladies in my current tip community group. And we're recording this video to just help people know, okay, what is a tip community group? Because I have trouble explaining it to a lot of people. And so we're just going to give this a roll. We didn't really practice any of this before we got on here. We're just going to be ourselves. You might see people drinking or eating or whatever during this. You might see who knows what else, but we're just going to be ourselves. And we don't know how else to be, honestly, in these groups. So what I'm going to do to begin is I'm just going to call on you all and just to tell us a little bit like, who you are, and why did you join the tip community group? You can share as much or little as you want. So we'll just do a general introduction and then we'll go into the open-ended questions. So Wendy, who are you? And as much as you want to share about why you decided to join a tip community group.
Okay, so I'm Wendy Cohen, and I live on a mountain in South Carolina, and I'm creating an intentional community here of people who want to care about the land, who care about the Lord, and who care about each other. And I had seen the way Bethany interacted with people, and I was very, very jealous of it. It was like she had so much vitality, so much energy, so much curiosity, so much interest. And it didn't matter whether she was tired, it didn't matter how long the day had been, it didn't seem to matter. She was there with people, and I was like, I've got to know how you work because I need that for myself. So that's why I joined.
Nice. Thank you. Thank you. And huge compliments. And we've seen a lot, I'd say, on your side with that too, about
Yeah.
being present with people. So thank you. Thank you for that compliment.
Thank you. Thank you.
Betty, how about you?
My name is Betty Walton. I live in Amarillo, Texas, in an apartment right now. And I joined because I was desperate for interaction with people. I feel like we haven't gotten to know as many people since we moved here. And I felt kind of isolated and by myself. So I just needed some people.
I love it. And you're happy with the people you got?
Oh, I'm delighted.
I love it. I love how God answered that. It's awesome. Thank you, Betty. All right, Deb, how about you?
Yeah, so I had met Bethany at an event, and then she invited me to do a church 101 group, just I think it was 6 weeks or something like that. And I was very intrigued that there were other people in this world that like to ask deep questions. That like really intrigued me because that's where I've been. And it's so yeah, from the Church 101 group, we did some activities that I had never really seen done. And it had sort of a process with it. So I liked that it had a little bit of structure, but yet there was some depth and was very safe. And I didn't know any of those people, barely knew Bethany, and felt immediately safe. And that was part of it. And learned some skills in that I wanted to further. And then so when this group, yeah, Deb West, I did say that, didn't I? Maybe.
Yes.
Anyway, I think that's my name. Yeah, so when this opportunity came up, I wanted to continue from what I had learned in that 6-week class.
Love that. I love that. And so, yeah, I think some people know that I help out with Luke 10 and amongst other groups, and that's what she's referring to with Church 101. So that's what's so amazing about these groups is they come from everywhere, right? We got Deb, Luke 10, we've got Think Differently Academy, we've got Being Known, the Being Known podcast group. We got so many different groups and backgrounds represented. And the cool part is that all can just fit in and get to know each other and get to know everybody on a deep level. So that's awesome. Thank you, Deb, for reminding me about that. I forgot. We traveled so long together. I'm like, how did you get here?
Well, I actually met you at a Think Differently event, and
Yes.
then Luke 10, and then now this. So it just all kind of weaves together. Yeah.
She's seen all my worlds collide, and she's still here. I don't know. Anyway. All right. Last but not least on this call, Paula, would you like to introduce yourself and how you came in this group?
My name's Paula Robbins. I live in Columbus, Ohio. I think, Bethany, I found you through the Being Known podcast discussion group on Facebook. You had put up a notice about one of your pop-up sessions, and I got in on some of those. I had been listening to the Being Known podcast. I was in the process of reading Kurt Thompson's books and found myself just getting hungrier and hungrier for an experience like the confessional communities that were being described. And I know that what we're doing is not precisely that, but I think it's largely the same type of thing, looking for spiritual growth, looking to draw closer to God and others through the story work.
Yeah.
And I was so affected by just the pop-up groups, which are what, Bethany, an hour or less usually?
Yeah, hour or less, just popping in and learning how to check in. Yep.
Often, and I don't think we ever had the same group twice.
No.
There were a couple constants. You were a constant, of course. Maybe one or two other people, one person I can think of, and still, each time I came away feeling seen and understood and supported, and in a way feeling closer to the folks that I had just been with than I feel to people that I've known for decades. Because I know a lot of people, I know quite a few people, and people I know that in a crisis I could call on and they would come or do what they could to help. People I know are, do have a true faith in God, are basically good people, and yet the relationships seem to stall out on a fairly shallow level.
Yeah.
And even in the deeper things, it seems to settle into a state of religiosity and everyone quoting the right Bible verses and stays pretty impersonal, really.
Yeah.
And I just knew that there was more and I needed more. I was working on some difficult issues in my own life and starting to delve into my own story, which 3 years into it, I still feel like I'm just starting to delve into my story in some ways. And I knew I needed to do that, but I also knew I needed some support in doing that.
Yeah, that's huge.
And it is just priceless to me what I have learned from other people and realizing that the details sometimes differ a lot. And yet I think a lot of what we're experiencing is very much the same.
Yeah. That's huge. And you hit on a big part because we all have different stories, but the more that we
Mm-hmm.
share, we go like, wait a minute, you experienced that too.
Yes.
And so I'm
Yes.
just going to be honest. I have some people, and I want to have you guys speak into this. We didn't practice any of this beforehand, so I don't know what they're going to say. So I'm kind of nervous. But a question I get is, Bethany, I'm afraid. I'm really afraid to join one of these groups. Can you guys speak into that? Because I don't think anybody joined this group, like, I don't think so, without at least a little bit of fear. So how did you deal with that fear? And when did you notice that, okay, like, it's going to be okay? And how is that for you?
And Bethany, I think that it's always a challenge to choose to be vulnerable. Even if we're talking to our best friend, it's a challenge to choose to be vulnerable. And when you're talking about a group of strangers, to make that choice requires a level of commitment to yourself and your own process that's rich and deep. And what I have found in this group is that the more vulnerable I choose to be, the more fruit I see in my life. And it's the constant choice of, will I tell what's on the surface? Will I tell what's emotionally real? Will I tell what's spiritually real? Will I focus on what's going on in my body and is real in my body? Or sometimes will I drop all of that and just wait in silence with the Lord to see what does he want to bring up in my life right now? And every time I do that, it makes me shaky because it's such a depth of vulnerability that comes about. And every time I do that, there's a door that cracks open, opens wide, or the whole door is removed. And I get to walk into a brand new landscape of his love that's been waiting for me.
I know that was such a hard place to end, but don't worry, we're going to come back to more of what Wendy had to say next week. But how do you really be vulnerable in a group? And better than that, how do you make sure a group's safe? Well, that's exactly what we're going to talk about next week. So come join us again. And if you're one of those that like, hey, Bethany, I really want to see this whole thing in process. Like, I don't want to wait till next week. I want to see this whole video. Well, you can check it out on my website, bethanybourne.com. Just click on the see a tip group, community group in action. You can see that button right there. And as always, we'd love to have you. I would love to have you as part of my group, as part of the tip community groups, as part of Step Out and Thrive. So if you're interested in joining, all the links are there at bethanybourne.com. And again, we can't wait to see you next week. So dare to do more than just survive, step out and thrive. See you guys back next week. Bye.